Dad retired and gave our business. I worked 12 years to build with him to my brother, because he deserves it as the golden child, then demoted me, so I left and took half the business with me to rebuild. Hey Reddit, strap in because this is the story of how my dad handed over the business I spent 12 years building with him to my younger brother who showed up 3 years ago, then had the nerve to demote me when I didn't bow down and kiss the ring. Spoiler alert, I didn't stick around to watch that train wreck, and I took half the business with me when I left. So I'm a 34-year-old guy who's been working in commercial HVAC since I was 22. Not the sexiest industry, I know, but it's solid work that pays well if you know what you're doing. My dad started his HVAC company back in the 90s, built it from nothing into a respectable business serving commercial clients across 3 counties. When I graduated college with a business degree, he asked me to come work with him. Said he was getting older and wanted to start training someone to eventually take over. I was his first call. Not some random business partner, not a professional manager he could hire, but me, his oldest son. He sat me down at a diner and laid out this whole vision about how we'd build something together, how I'd learn the business from the ground up, and eventually it would be mine to run. Father-son legacy type stuff that honestly got me pretty pumped. I had other job offers lined up, better paying ones in finance, but this felt bigger than just a paycheck. This was family. This was building something that would last. So I said yes. I jumped in with both feet, ready to learn everything about running an HVAC business. And let me be clear about something right now. I didn't just show up and collect a paycheck because Daddy owned the company. I started from the absolute bottom. My first 6 months were spent in the field doing actual installation work, crawling through attics in August heat, hauling equipment up commercial building stairs, getting my hands dirty with every aspect of the technical side. Dad insisted on it. He said if I was going to run the business one day, I needed to understand every single job from the inside out. I needed to be able to look a technician in the eye and know exactly what they were dealing with. So that's what I did. I spent 2 years in the field, got my certifications, learned how to troubleshoot systems, how to deal with difficult clients on job sites, all of it. After those first 2 years, Dad brought me into the office side. I started learning estimating, project management, client relations, all the business operations that keep an HVAC company running. I worked alongside him on everything. We'd be up until midnight going over bids for commercial projects, figuring out material costs, managing our crew schedules, dealing with the mountains of paperwork that comes with commercial contracts. I learned how to read construction documents, understand mechanical specifications, navigate local building codes that changed constantly. The learning curve was steep. There were times I seriously questioned whether I'd made the right choice. I remember this one project early on, a 3-story medical building, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I was on that job site every single day for 3 months, sometimes starting at 5 in the morning and not leaving until after dark. That project almost broke me, but when we finally finished it and the client sent a letter praising our work despite all the complications, that's when I realized I could actually do this. Over the next 10 years, Dad and I turned his decent-sized operation into something legitimately impressive. We went from 15 employees to 42. Our annual revenue tripled. We landed contracts with major commercial clients, including several office buildings, 2 shopping centers, and a partnership with a property management company that brought in steady work. I brought in systems for better project tracking, implemented scheduling software that improved our efficiency, created standardized processes for quality control that reduced our callback rate significantly. I wasn't just maintaining what Dad had built. I was actively improving it, modernizing it, making it more competitive. I handled most of the business development, built relationships with general contractors, learned how to read architectural plans and submit proper bids. Dad handled more of the operational side, but as he got into his 60s, I gradually took over more and more of the day-to-day management. By year 10, I was basically running the company. Dad still came in, still had the final say on big decisions, but I was the one managing projects, handling client relationships, overseeing the crew. I'm not going to lie and say I was some perfect business genius, but I was good at what I did. Our clients trusted me, our employees respected me, and the business grew steadily every single year I was involved. I sacrificed a lot for this company, missed family events, worked weekends, took calls at midnight when equipment failed at a client site. My girlfriend of 4 years left me because I was always working. I lived in a modest apartment because I was constantly reinvesting my time into learning and growing the business instead of chasing a fancy lifestyle. I remember one Christmas I had to leave dinner early because a heating system failed at a nursing home. It was December 23rd. Temperature was dropping into the teens, and we had elderly residents who needed heat. I spent Christmas Eve on a ladder in a mechanical room while my family was opening presents. Did I complain? No, because that's what running a business means. You do what needs to be done. My social life basically disappeared. Friends stopped inviting me to things because I'd cancel at the last minute for work emergencies. I missed my best friend's wedding because I was managing a crisis with a major client. Dating was nearly impossible because what woman wants to compete with a HVAC company for attention? But I told myself it was worth it. I was building something, creating a legacy, working toward the day when all these sacrifices would pay off, and I'd be running a successful business that I'd helped build from the ground up. Dad saw all of this. He saw me give up relationships, free time, hobbies, everything to make this company succeed. And every time I questioned whether it was worth it, he'd remind me, "You're building your future here. This is going to be yours." The whole time, Dad kept saying the same thing. "This is going to be yours one day. You're building your future here." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was putting in the work, proving myself year after year, building something real. This was supposed to be my legacy. Enter my younger brother, Justin. Justin is 29 now, 5 years younger than me. We've never been particularly close, mostly because we're completely different people. Where I'm focused and driven, Justin has always been more of a figure it out later kind of guy. Not in a bad way necessarily, just different priorities. Justin did the college thing, got a degree in communications, then spent his 20s kind of floating around. He worked at a sports marketing agency for a while, did some freelance social media management, spent a year doing basically nothing while finding himself on the West Coast. Dad and Mom supported him through all of it, which was fine. Every family has one kid who takes a more winding path. About 3 years ago, Justin moved back to our hometown. He'd broken up with his long-term girlfriend out in California and decided he wanted to be closer to family. Dad, being Dad, immediately offered him a job at the company. "Come work with us," he said. "It'll be good to have both my sons in the business." I didn't think much of it at the time. Sure, whatever. Justin needed work. We could always use help in the office. And honestly, I thought it might be good to have family around more. Maybe we'd actually get closer working together. Justin started in a pretty standard administrative role. He handled some of the social media, worked on updating our website, helped with basic paperwork. Nothing complex, nothing that required deep knowledge of HVAC or commercial construction. Just general office stuff that needed doing. And here's the thing. Justin was fine at it. Not amazing, not terrible, just fine. He'd show up around 9, leave at 5, do his tasks, collect his paycheck. He didn't show particular interest in learning the technical side. Didn't ask to go out on job sites. Didn't try to understand the complexities of commercial HVAC projects. I actually tried to get him more involved early on. Invited him to come out on job sites with me, offered to teach him about estimating. He'd usually decline with some version of, "That's not really my thing," which fine, whatever. But it bothered me that Dad never seemed to notice or care that Justin wasn't trying to learn the actual business. What Justin did do was spend a lot of time in Dad's office. They'd have these long conversations about his ideas for growing the company through social media marketing, about building a stronger brand presence. All surface-level stuff that sounds good, but doesn't actually translate to better business results in commercial HVAC. Clients in our industry don't choose contractors based on Instagram posts. They choose based on reputation, reliability, and results. But Dad started talking about Justin constantly. Justin had a good idea for the website. Justin thinks we should update our logo. Every family dinner became a Justin appreciation session. I'd mentioned landing a huge contract worth potentially $500,000 in annual revenue, and Dad would nod and say, "That's good," before pivoting to how Justin's social media post got engagement. It was subtle at first, easy to brush off as Dad just being excited to have both his sons working together. But it started getting weird around the 1-year mark of Justin working there. Dad began pulling Justin into meetings he had no business being in. Big client discussions, project planning sessions, conversations with general contractors. Justin would sit there, barely following the technical discussions, occasionally offering some surface-level comment, and Dad would act like he'd just solved world hunger. I remember this one meeting with a major property management company. We were discussing technical details about our preventive maintenance program. Justin interrupted to suggest we create a mobile app where tenants could report issues directly. The property manager pointed out they already had their own system for that. After the meeting, Dad said, "I liked Justin's creative thinking in there. We need more of that kind of innovation." I tried talking to Dad about it, casually mentioned that maybe Justin should spend some time learning the actual business first. Dad got defensive. He's family. He should be involved in everything. Things really started shifting in year 2 of Justin being there. Dad started describing Justin as his strategic advisor, even though Justin's strategy seemed to consist of suggesting we leverage social media more and build our brand. Meanwhile, I'm out there actually building relationships with clients, managing million-dollar projects, keeping our operation running smoothly, and I'm still just the operations guy. Dad even started asking Justin's opinion on operational decisions that Justin had no qualification to weigh in on. We'd be discussing whether to bid on a complex retrofit project, and Dad would turn to Justin and ask what he thought. Justin would say something vague like, "I think we should take calculated risks to grow," without any understanding of what the actual risks were, or whether we had the crew capacity to handle it. It got to the point where I stopped bringing up ideas in meetings, because I knew Dad would just ask Justin what he thought, and Justin would reframe my idea as his own while adding nothing of substance. I'd suggest expanding our service area into a neighboring county where I'd built relationships with contractors. Dad would nod non-committally. Then 2 days later, Justin would suggest we explore new markets, and Dad would act like it was the most brilliant strategic thinking he'd ever heard. The breaking point started building about 6 months ago. Dad started making comments about retirement. He was 67, had been working since he was 18, and honestly deserved to step back. I got it. I'd been preparing for this for 12 years. We'd had countless conversations about transition planning, about how I'd gradually take over more responsibilities, about what retirement would look like for him. We'd even mapped out specific timelines. I remember sitting in his office 3 years ago with a legal pad, sketching out a 5-year transition plan. He'd gradually reduce his hours, I'd take over more client relationships, we'd formalize my ownership stake in the company. It was all planned out, discussed, agreed upon. That legal pad was probably still in a drawer somewhere, a monument to promises that turned out to be worthless. I figured this was finally happening. The thing we'd been working toward. The whole reason I'd invested 12 years of my life into this business. Dad would retire, I'd take over as owner and operator, and we'd continue growing what we'd built together. Maybe I'd even bring Justin along in some capacity if he wanted to stay involved. Give him a management role that fit his actual skill set. That's what I thought was coming. But then Dad started having private meetings with Justin. Long conversations in Dad's office with the door closed. I'd see them through the glass, heads together, Dad gesturing animatedly while Justin nodded along. Sometimes these meetings would go on for hours. When I'd ask what they were discussing, Dad would wave it off. Just talking about the future of the company. I started noticing Dad bringing in business books and leaving them on Justin's desk. Books about leadership, about management philosophy, about running successful companies. Books I'd read years ago when I was actually learning how to run the business. It was like watching someone cram for a test they should have been preparing for over years. Yeah, turns out the future he was talking about didn't include me the way I thought it did. 2 months ago, Dad called a staff meeting, brought in all the key people, about 15 of us total, including management, senior technicians, the accounting person. He stood up at the head of the conference table with this big smile on his face and announced he was officially retiring at the end of the month. Everyone clapped. People congratulated him. He'd earned it, no question. I was happy for him, excited even. This was it, the transition moment we'd been building toward. Then he kept talking. I'm thrilled to announce that Justin will be taking over as the new president and CEO of the company. I swear to God, the room went silent. Not the good kind of silent, but the awkward kind where everyone suddenly becomes very interested in the table in front of them. A few people glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Our operations manager, Phil, who'd been with the company for 8 years, literally did a double take. I just sat there, trying to process what I'd just heard. Justin would be taking over. Justin, who'd been there for 3 years. Justin, who didn't know the difference between a condenser coil and an evaporator coil. Justin, who'd never managed a project, never dealt with a difficult client, never had to make a call at 2 in the morning because equipment failed at a hospital and people's lives depended on getting it fixed. Dad continued his announcement, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on everyone's expectations. Justin brings fresh perspective and new energy to the role. He's going to help us modernize and expand in exciting new directions. I looked at Justin. He was trying to look humble, but I could see the smugness barely hidden underneath. He'd known. Of course he'd known. Those private meetings weren't just casual chats. Dad had been preparing him for this, and nobody thought to mention it to the guy who'd spent 12 years building the foundation Justin would now be standing on. After the meeting ended, I walked straight to Dad's office. He was packing up some personal items, still wearing that same pleased smile like he'd just done something wonderful. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up, and something in his expression shifted. He knew what was coming. "I know this is a big change, but I think it's for the best." "For the best?" I kept my voice level, but I could feel the anger rising. "Dad, I've worked here for 12 years. I've built this business with you. We talked about this, about me taking over. What happened?" He sighed and set down the photo frame he'd been wrapping. "Justin is better suited for the leadership role. He's got vision, fresh ideas. He connects with people in a way that's more modern." "Fresh ideas?" I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. "Dad, he doesn't know the business. He can't read plans, doesn't understand commercial systems, has never managed a project team. What exactly is he going to lead with?" "That's the point," Dad said, and I could hear the defensiveness creeping in. "We need someone who thinks differently, who isn't stuck in the old ways of doing things." Old ways. The ways that tripled revenue and built a respected company. Those old ways. "What about everything you told me?" I asked. "About building this together? About it being mine one day? Was that all meaningless?" Dad stood up and I could see he was getting frustrated now. "Things change. Justin needs this opportunity. He's struggled to find his path, and this is perfect for him. You're already established. You'll still have an important role here." And there it was. The real reason. Justin needed this more than I did. Justin, who'd spent 3 years doing basic administrative work, needed to be handed a company on a silver platter because he'd struggled to find his path. Meanwhile, I'd found my path 12 years ago and paved it with hard work, late nights, and constant dedication. But that apparently counted for nothing. "What role exactly am I supposed to have?" I asked. "Justin wants to restructure things a bit. You'd move into a senior technician position, focus more on the field work, take some of the pressure off yourself." I actually laughed at that. Not a happy laugh, but the kind that comes out when something is so absurd your brain can't process it properly. "You're demoting me. After 12 years of building this business, of managing operations, of landing the clients that keep this company profitable, you're demoting me to be a technician." "It's not a demotion," Dad said quickly. "It's a restructuring. Justin needs to build his own team, bring in his own management style." Translation: Justin wanted me out of his way, and Dad was making it happen. "Does Justin even understand what this company does?" I asked. "Has he ever successfully completed a commercial HVAC project? Does he know how to bid a job, manage a crew, deal with an inspector who's being difficult?" "He'll learn," Dad said firmly. "The same way you did, and you can help teach him." So now I was supposed to train my replacement, the replacement who'd be making all the decisions while I crawled through attics and carried equipment. Perfect. "This is because he's your favorite," I said quietly. "Because he's always been your favorite, and you can't stand to see him struggle while I succeed." Dad's face flushed. "That's not fair. I love both my sons equally. This is a business decision." "It's a terrible business decision," I shot back. "And you know it. You're handing the company to someone unqualified because you feel guilty that his life hasn't gone the way he wanted. You're sacrificing 12 years of my work, sacrificing the stability of a business you spent 40 years building, because Justin needs to feel special." "He's my son," Dad said, and his voice had that edge that meant the conversation was over. "And I've made my decision. You can either accept your new role and support your brother, or you can leave." I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd worked beside for 12 years, who'd promised me a future that he was now giving away to someone else. And I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I'd never be enough. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I achieved, I'd always come in second to Justin. "You're going to regret this," I said finally. "When Justin runs this company into the ground because he doesn't understand the fundamentals, when clients leave because he can't deliver on promises, when employees quit because they're being led by someone who doesn't know what he's doing, you're going to look back on this moment and realize you destroyed everything we built." Dad just shook his head. "You're being dramatic. Justin will be fine. Better than fine." I walked out of his office and went straight home. Didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't clean out my desk, just left. I spent that entire night staring at my ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do now. 12 years of my life. Gone. My career trajectory. Destroyed. My future. Handed to someone else on a silver platter. But somewhere around 3 in the morning, something shifted in my head. I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started getting angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger, but the cold, calculating kind that actually gets things done. Dad thought he could just demote me and I'd accept it? Thought I'd roll over and teach Justin how to run the company I'd built? Thought 12 years of relationships, knowledge, and hard work could just be erased with a restructuring announcement? Time to show him exactly how wrong he was. The next morning, I started making phone calls. First call was to Phil, our operations manager. Phil had been with the company for 8 years and was one of the most competent people we had. He understood both the technical and business sides, and more importantly, he was loyal to the work, not the family name. "Phil, we need to talk," I said when he answered. "Somewhere private. You free for lunch?" We met at a diner across town, far enough away that we wouldn't run into anyone from the company. I laid it out straight. "I'm leaving," I told him, "and I'm starting my own HVAC company. I want you to come with me." Phil didn't look surprised. I figured something like this was coming after that meeting. Justin as CEO? That's insane. I know, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Justin doesn't understand this business, and Dad's too proud to admit he made a mistake. The company's going to struggle, and I don't want to be there to watch it happen. "What's your plan?" Phil asked. I pulled out a notebook where I'd spent all night sketching things out. "I've got savings. Enough to cover startup costs, equipment, insurance, licensing. I've spent 12 years building relationships with clients and contractors. A lot of them work with us because they work with me, not because of the company name. I can start small, bring on a few key people, and build from there." "And you want me to manage operations?" Phil filled in. "You'd be my partner," I said. "Not just an employee. We split ownership. I handle business development and client relations. You handle operations and crew management. We build something clean, something based on merit, not family politics." Phil was quiet for a minute, thinking it over. Then he smiled. "I'm in. When do we start?" Over the next week, I had similar conversations with 3 of our best technicians. These were guys who'd worked with me for years, who respected my work ethic and knew I'd never ask them to do something I wouldn't do myself. 2 of them said yes immediately. The third needed a few days to think about it, but eventually came around. Carlos was our most senior technician, a guy who'd been in HVAC for 25 years and could diagnose problems just by listening to equipment run. He didn't even hesitate. "I've been waiting for you to ask," he said. "I watched what happened at that meeting. That was garbage, and everyone knows it. You want to start something real? Count me in." Mike and Andre were younger technicians I'd trained personally over the past few years. They were skilled, reliable, and most importantly, they understood what good leadership looked like because they'd experienced it. Mike told me he'd been planning to leave anyway because he couldn't take watching Justin stumble around pretending to know what he was doing. I also reached out to clients, not all of them, and I was careful about it. I focused on the relationships I'd built personally, the ones where I was the primary point of contact. I didn't badmouth Dad or Justin, didn't try to sabotage the company. I just let them know I was starting my own operation and would love to continue working with them. The response was better than I'd hoped. 5 of our major clients said they'd be interested in seeing proposals from my new company. 2 of them flat out said they'd been working with me, not the company name, and would be moving their business over. One property manager told me directly, "I've been working with you for 6 years. You've never let me down, you know my buildings better than anyone, and I trust you. Where you go, my business goes." That felt amazing and validating in a way I hadn't expected. It confirmed what I'd suspected. I wasn't just a cog in Dad's machine. I'd built real value through my relationships and work quality. Another client, a general contractor I'd worked with on multiple large projects, said something that stuck with me. "Your dad built a good company, but you made it great. Justin seems like a nice kid, but nice doesn't fix broken equipment or manage complex projects. I work with professionals, and you're the professional I know." I filed all the paperwork for my new LLC, got the licensing and insurance lined up, found a small commercial space to rent for an office. It wasn't much, about 1,000 square feet in a light industrial area, but it had room for desks, storage for parts and tools, and adequate parking for our trucks. I bought a used truck and some basic equipment. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The paperwork alone was brutal. Business licenses, contractor licenses, bonding, insurance policies, setting up payroll systems, creating employee agreements, opening business banking accounts. All the stuff Dad had already figured out decades ago that I now had to rebuild from scratch. There were moments late at night, buried in paperwork, when I questioned whether this was worth it. But every time doubt crept in, I'd remember that staff meeting. I'd remember Dad's face when he announced Justin as CEO. I'd remember 12 years of promises that turned out to mean nothing. And the doubt would transform into determination. I set up our scheduling system, created project management protocols, established vendor relationships for equipment and parts. Everything Dad had built over 40 years, I had to recreate in a matter of weeks. It was exhausting, but also exhilarating. Every system I set up, I did it my way. Better than before, more efficient, more transparent. 3 weeks after Dad's announcement, I walked into his office one last time. I had a folder with me containing my resignation letter and a few other documents. "I'm done," I said, dropping the folder on his desk. "I'm starting my own company." Dad looked up from whatever he was working on, and I saw shock flash across his face. "You're what?" "I'm leaving. Starting my own HVAC company. It's called Summit Commercial Services. We're already licensed, insured, and operational." He opened the folder, scanning through the documents. "You can't just take our clients." "I'm not taking anyone," I said calmly. "I'm offering them a choice. They can continue working with you or they can work with me. Several have already chosen to work with me because they value the relationships we've built over the years." Dad's face was turning red now. "This is completely unethical. You're stealing from your own family." "I'm not stealing anything," I countered. "I'm competing. In the same market you taught me how to compete in. You wanted Justin to have the company? Fine. He's got it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stick around and watch him drive it into the ground while taking orders from someone who doesn't know what he's doing. Justin is perfectly capable of running this company. Then he'll have no problem competing with me," I said. "If he's as talented as you think he is, if he really has all this vision and fresh perspective, then my little startup shouldn't be a threat." Dad stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. "I built this company. Everything you know I taught you, you owe me." And there it was. And the real issue. Dad thought my knowledge, my skills, my relationships all belonged to him because he'd been the one to train me. Like I was some kind of tool he'd created that should only be used for his purposes. Like the 12 years I'd spent applying and expanding that knowledge, building on what he taught me, creating value beyond what he'd shown me. Like all of that was somehow still his property. "You know what you taught me, Dad?" I said, and I could feel 12 years of suppressed frustration coming out. "You taught me that hard work matters. You taught me that relationships are built on trust and follow through. You taught me that actions have consequences and promises mean something. You taught me all of that. And then you broke every single one of those principles when you handed this company to Justin." His face was getting redder. "I gave you opportunities. I gave you a job when you graduated. I taught you this business. You didn't give me opportunities," I countered. "I earned them. Every promotion, every responsibility, every client relationship, I earned it. I wasn't handed anything. I worked my tail off for 12 years while you watched, and you know it. That's why this hurts so much. Because you know exactly what I put into this company, and you decided it didn't matter." "Justin is my son too," Dad said, and his voice cracked a little. "He struggled. He needed this." "And I didn't need it?" I asked. "I didn't need the promise you made to me to mean something? I didn't need the 12 years I invested to be recognized? I didn't need my own father to honor his word?" The office went quiet for a moment. Through the window, I could see employees pretending not to watch what was clearly an emotional conversation. "You're right," I said finally. "You did teach me. You taught me how to build an HVAC business from the ground up. You taught me about integrity, hard work, and treating clients right. You taught me that relationships matter more than anything else in this industry. So thank you. I'm going to use everything you taught me to build my own success. And maybe, while I'm doing that, I'll actually honor the principles you taught me, even if you couldn't. If you do this, you're no longer welcome in this family," Dad said, and I could hear the threat in his voice. I paused at that. It stung, not going to lie. But I'd already made my choice. "That's your decision to make," I said. "But just so we're clear, I didn't leave the family. You chose Justin over me. You chose to give him everything I earned, and you expected me to just accept it. I'm not the one breaking the family here." I walked out before he could respond. Justin was in the hallway, probably having heard raised voices from Dad's office. He looked nervous, like a kid who knows he's in trouble but doesn't quite understand why. "You're really leaving?" he asked. "Yep. You're taking clients with you. I'm offering them alternatives. Whether they take it or not is their choice." Justin stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. "Dad gave me this company. I'm the boss now. You don't get to just poach our business." I looked at my younger brother, this guy who'd stumbled through his 20s doing nothing in particular and was now being handed success he hadn't earned, and I felt nothing but pity. "Justin, I'm going to give you some free advice," I said. "Being the boss isn't about having the title. It's about earning respect, understanding the work, and making good decisions. Dad gave you a title, but he can't give you competence. That's something you have to earn. Good luck with that." His face flushed, but I was already walking away. That was 6 months ago. Since then, my company has grown faster than I'd expected. We started with just me and Phil, those 3 technicians, and a handful of clients. Now we're at 12 employees and growing. We've landed several major contracts, including 2 that used to be Dad's company's bread and butter. The first 3 months were brutal. We were operating on thin margins, taking every job we could get. I was doing everything, bidding jobs, managing projects, sometimes going out on service calls, handling administrative tasks, doing payroll manually. There was 1 week in month 2 where I wasn't sure we'd make it. We had a major equipment delivery delay, which meant we couldn't bill the client on schedule, which meant our cash flow was tight right when payroll was due. I ended up taking nothing out for myself that month and putting personal savings back in to cover payroll. But we made it through. The equipment came in, we finished the project, the client paid, and suddenly we had breathing room. More importantly, we had a completed project and a happy client who started recommending us. Our second major project was a retrofit of an older office building's HVAC system. Complex work that we completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule and 15% under budget. The client was so impressed, they gave us contracts for 3 of their other properties. Word started spreading. General contractors started calling, asking for bids. By month 4, we had more work than we could handle. I hired 2 more technicians, then brought on an administrative person to handle scheduling and paperwork. Starting a business from scratch is brutal. There were weeks where I wasn't sure we'd make payroll, where I was working 18-hour days. But it's my work, my risk, my reward. Every success feels earned because it is. Every client we land is because they chose us based on our work, not legacy or family connections. Meanwhile, Dad's company has been struggling. I heard through the grapevine that 3 more of their senior employees quit in the months after I left. Justin apparently tried to implement some kind of modern management structure he'd read about in a business book, which mostly just confused everyone and created unnecessary bureaucracy. Phil heard from a buddy who still works there that Justin tried to eliminate the operations manager position entirely because he read that traditional management structures stifle innovation. This lasted about 2 weeks before emergency service calls started falling through cracks and project schedules became complete chaos. Dad had to step back in and reinstate the position. They lost 2 major clients in the first 4 months. One of them specifically told me they left because Justin didn't understand their needs and kept promising things he couldn't deliver. They'd had an emergency equipment failure, and Justin apparently promised it would be fixed within 4 hours without checking whether they actually had crew available. The system took 2 days to fix, and the client was livid. The other client just quietly moved their business to us. When I called to thank them, the facilities manager said, "We don't have time for on-the-job training. We need professionals who know what they're doing." I also heard that Justin tried to change their bidding process to be more competitive, which in practice meant they started underbidding projects to win contracts, then struggling to complete them profitably. One project apparently lost them almost $40,000. The worst part is Dad has to watch all of this happening. He retired, or at least he was supposed to, but from what I've heard, he's back in the office most days now, trying to correct Justin's mistakes, smoothing over problems with clients. The retirement he'd earned, the peaceful stepping back he deserved, he can't have it because the company is struggling. I ran into Dad about 2 months ago at an industry trade show. He looked older, more tired. We nodded at each other but didn't speak. Justin was with him, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit. Their booth traffic was pretty slow compared to previous years. I was there with Phil and Carlos, and our booth was busy the whole time. It felt surreal to be at the same trade show, 20 feet apart, with such different realities playing out. Phil told me he'd heard that Dad was having to get more involved because Justin was overwhelmed, that Dad was having to undo some of Justin's changes and go back to systems that actually worked, that several clients had expressed concerns. The financial impact is starting to show too. I heard they had to let 2 office staff go because of budget constraints. They're apparently not bidding on larger projects anymore because they don't have the cash flow to finance the work up front. Their equipment fleet is aging because they can't afford to upgrade it. I don't take pleasure in any of that. Honestly, it's sad. Dad built something good, and he's watching it deteriorate because he made a decision based on family politics instead of business sense. My mom has called a few times. She tries to play peacemaker, saying Dad made a mistake and I should come back. That family is more important than business. I told her I agree that family is important, which is why it hurt so much when Dad made it clear I wasn't the family that mattered. She didn't have much to say to that. Last week, I got a call from Dad's business lawyer. He wanted to discuss a potential non-compete agreement, suggesting that my business was unfairly competing with Dad's company. I laughed and told him I'd be happy to discuss it with my lawyer present. The conversation ended pretty quickly after that. There's no non-compete that would hold up since I was never under any such agreement, and I'm not doing anything illegal or unethical. The thing is, I'm not trying to destroy Dad's company. I'm just trying to build mine. If that creates competition, well, that's how business works. Dad taught me that too. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.